Hello dear learners, welcome back to my channel, Era Classes, and today we'll be discussing one of the very popular and important poems written by Kamala Das, and the title of the poem is My Mother at 66. Now, this is a poem which is written in a single sentence. At the very outset, I'd like you to understand this, that within a very brief compass, the poet has given us, or she's able to drive home the message and give us the theme of the poem, that is fear of losing her mother, fear of separation, in fact, right? And again, I'm repeating, though it is very short poem, but in no way, okay, the poet has failed to convey what she's trying to. And now, before I start the poem, I like you to understand how we can critically appreciate a poem, any given poem for that matter, right? And follow the simple steps. First, read the poem very carefully, thoroughly. Read the text. Step number two, understand or think what the poet is trying to say or convey. Third step, remember some important lines from the poem. And the fourth one, remember the title and the name of the poet. That is very, very simple and basic way, so as how to properly critically appreciate a given poem. Remember this point. Now, talking about the poem, the poet gives us a picture of a mother. Okay, pain picture. She draws a pain picture of a mother. They are driving to this Cochin airport, and it was Friday morning, remember? Okay, and her mother was sitting beside her. And when she looked at her mother, when she observed her, she was dozing, or she was sleeping. And she was sleeping with her mouth wide open. And when the poet looked at her from the close quarters, she realized that her mother was really very old. And when she looked at her, face with wide mouth wide open, she almost had this, fear or an image of a corpse or a dead body. Remember. So here the poet has used figure of speech that is called as simile. Now what is simile? Simile is a figure of speech in which two unlike things are compared. Remember, two different things are compared. But there is one thing similar between the things compared. Now the poet goes on to compare her mother with a corpse. And what was the similarity? Her face appeared to be pale, lifeless, okay, like a dead body. So that is the reason why the poet compares her mother to a corpse. This is figure of speech, remember, called as simile. Now, in order to, you know, divert her mind, in order to divert her mood from such a very sad, you know, line of thought, the poet looked outside the car or the window of the car. And what sees outside the car, she sees young trees sprinting. Remember this. Now, the poet could have easily said, trees sprinting, but she has used this word young. Why? In order to bring out the contrast or the difference between the two worlds. Remember, the poet has presented us here two worlds rather. One, the world inside the car, which is symbolic of death, decay, and old age. Okay, and the world outside the car, where she sees the trees sprinting and all. This is the world full of life, youth, energy, and vitality for that matter. And young trees sprinting. Now, here the poet has again used this figure of speech called as personification. Now, what is personification? Understand this. Personification is a figure of speech in which an inanimate object or a non living thing, for simple language, is given the attribute of a living being. Now, here in the case, trees are sprinting. We all know that trees can't run or sprint for that matter, but the poet is making them sprint. So, this is giving an attribute of a living being. Okay, so this is personification. And I'll give you an example so as to make you more clearer of this kind of figure of speech. That is, whenever we talk about, for example, if I say listening to my story, uh, the chalk started crying. Okay, so chalk cannot cry, isn't it? It is an inanimate object, but I'm making it cry, almost giving an attribute of a living being. So that is a figure of speech called as personification. Don't get confused here. Now, also she sees that the merry children spilling out of their homes. Now, what does the word merry mean? Merry means happy, and children spilling, that means moving out of their homes. Now, as I said to you earlier, that the poet is trying to bring in the contrast between the two worlds, the world inside the car and the world outside the car. So, the poet has very, very, aptly contrasted the two worlds, okay, with the images and symbols that she has used. Now, in the poem, again, the poet goes on to compare her mother with late winter's moon. Now, the obvious question might be, ringing in your mind, why does she compare her mother to a late winter's moon? Why not summer's moon? Now, again, the poet is trying to highlight and emphasize the fact, the point, that her mother, the face of her mother, is very dull. It's lacking brightness. Now, if you have observed, okay, if you understand this, if you know this, winter's moon is not as bright as in summer. So, this, figure of speech again is trying to contrast or trying to highlight, in fact, the condition of a mother who is very, very old. Now, uh, what happens when they reach the airport? This is also very important. Now, the poet, she looks at her mother, okay, and she kind of gives her a smile, and then she departs saying, "See you soon, Amma." Okay, and that is a kind of an assurance that she's trying to give herself. Okay, that is a kind of assurance that is kind to give herself that her mother is going to be all right when she returns. She's going to be there. She would be all fine, all well. Okay, and she would meet her mother again when she comes back. Okay, and at last, what does the poet do? She smiles and smiles and smiles. Now, this is a kind of a repetition. Okay, and why does she smile? She smiles in order to hide her feelings. She smiles in order to hide her fear that she is going to lose her mother very soon. So, in this, single sentence or in this poem, the poet has beautifully drawn the relationship of mother and a daughter, okay, and that fear of losing someone very near and dear to, her, that is her mother, and she gives us the fear. Again, I repeat this word fear, and that fear of losing her mother, though she only uses single sentence, but she has strongly ventilated her thoughts in this poem. Okay, so remember the figures of speech that we discussed. simile, personification. Okay, so this is the poem written by Kamala Das, my mother at 66. And also, please remember the steps that I've given you to discuss so as how to critically appreciate a poem. That is also very very important, and that particular those particular steps that we discuss will help you to critically appreciate any given poem or any text that is given to you. So till then, uh, happy reading, happy learning. If you have any doubts, please comment down below. Okay, I'll be more than happy to answer your queries, right?